studio. But for now, I want to introduce you to my new guest, who's Desirée Silverstone. It's a great name.
Thank you.
Isn't it? It's very cool. Who's a psychotherapist turned executive coach at Head Honchos. We'll dig into what they are in just a moment. But I noticed a slight accent.
Yes, you.
Would you mind
right.
sitting forward just a little bit, just
No
because
problem.
of the microphone? Thank you. So yes, I noticed a slight accent when you walked in.
Yes, I'm originally from South Africa, but I've actually been living in the UK longer than I lived in South Africa. So
You're just steadfastly not getting rid of that accent.
Well, I haven't really tried.
Yeah,
so
it's nice. I like
thank you.
I like it. So tell me a bit about yourself. Tell me how you became a psychotherapist.
Well, I was, as I said, born in South Africa. I had quite a difficult childhood, and I definitely wasn't an easy child. So, like all teenagers, when you get to being a teenager, nobody understands you, and I don't know whether adults came from, they arrived from Mars, but they never went through, being a teenager. Never.
No.
So as a teenager, it was like, you know what, nobody understands me, and I can totally, get what this is like, and I'm going to be a therapist, and I'm going to help people who are, teenagers, because I just totally get them. And at the time, bless my mother, she really did try, and I think every grey hair on her head came from me. So she sent me for therapy, and in South Africa, I mean, it was kind of 70s, 80s. It was absolutely abominable. I hope it's improved now. But I used to come out and I used to just want to cry, because it was this person sitting there going, and there was nothing coming back. And I used to walk out like more frustrated and angry and upset than when I went in. So I had a longing to sort of be a therapist, and also I was very, very self-aware from quite a young age, and although I didn't know what emotional intelligence was, because of my misery, a part of my catharsis was around writing poetry, and I would sit and wait for the feeling to come so that I could write the poem about the feeling. So it was just something that was instinctive. And when I reached about 14, I had this epiphany that my life was going to be about learning from hardship. Didn't matter what happened, that is what I was going to do. I was going to learn and take each thing as a lesson. And I still do that when I'm coaching or when I was a therapist. I always said, what has this person come to teach me? And look, I'll be honest with you, Petrie, sometimes I think, what is the universe telling me? It comes in Morse code, and sometimes I think I wasn't at that lesson, and I'm just kind of not getting, I know that there's a lesson here somewhere, but I'm not getting it. So it drove me very much to this whole sort of navel-gazing side of me, as well as life experience, made me want to help other people. So that's why I became a therapist.
It's very interesting, isn't it, that some people can have those experiences and want to help other people, as you did, but somebody could have identical experiences to you and not learn a thing, and not be able to take those lessons forward into helping other people. Why is that, do you think?
I think it really is part of your environment in which you grow up in. I had a mother who, bless her heart, actually thought that she was Anna Freud. I mean, Anna Freud was Sigmund Freud's daughter. She was an armchair psychologist, and everything was dissected. So I think I grew up in an environment where I had a parent who we could talk. There weren't that many boundaries. Whereas when you grow up in a family where people don't have awareness, and I think it's intergenerational from where my mother came from, and, it kind of repeats itself. But when you grow up in families where you don't have an environment in which things are talked about, explored, etc., it's just not a way of thinking. I think some people do slip through the net, but I think for the most part, it really comes from an environmental learning background of you grow up with what you grow up with.
Yeah. Do you think that we are getting better at introspection in this country? Because I do think that a lot of people, a lot of British people, are brought up to it, that introspection is somehow is indulgent, that it is, stop thinking about yourself, stop dealing with yourself, and you just crack on with it, stiff upper lip and all of that. And certainly introspection was something that I was never encouraged with. It was something that I developed, but it was never encouraged. It was like, what are you doing? Get outside, go and play, stop, why are you reading books? All of that. It was never about just being quiet with yourself.
I think that my answer is yes and no, because I think what's come to place and has become very, very prevalent is a very busy technological world. And people there's sort of different kinds of constructs, different pressures, in which people are very focused on technology and being seen in a different way. It's a whole new world. And I think the busier it gets, the less time there is for introspection. But then on the other hand, you have a lot of talk shows, podcasts, etc., that are promoting it. So where it's going, I'm not quite sure. I think the jury's out on that. I don't know how much research there is on it.
But I just wonder, because everything seems to be very external.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And at the moment, and people will externalize everything almost before they've internalized it, right? So you get people who are outwardly angry, and they haven't dealt with why they're angry, or they don't even know why they're angry. They haven't even thought about why they're angry. They're just immediately angry, or they're hiding behind this shell, and everything's got to be out there. That can't be healthy in any way.
No, it's not in any way. I think that happiness comes from emotional intelligence in terms of being aware of what's going on for you. And that starts with visceral feelings, because we actually feel from the bottom. This is our visceral bit from our stomach upwards. And then it's connected via the vagus nerve to our brains. So our visceral feelings actually tell us what we're, what we're actually feeling and inform us. And if you don't have that, like, this is making me angry, I can feel it, and you can't self-regulate, then you explode. So that whole thing of being emotionally aware is your emotional intelligence. And if you're not in touch with that, then you don't have any way of self-regulating and sort of planning what you're going to do or say. So, yes, people are very cut off from their feelings. Sometimes when I'm doing leadership training, and let's say hypothetically there's a room of 20, and I'll say, how many people are aware of their feelings in their body? And I'll be lucky if 2 people put their... And these are senior people in corporations. They just don't have any connection with what they're feeling.
Is that because they've shut it down, or are they hiding from it, or do they see them as a waste of time, or are they just not aware?
It could be a combination. I think that it's multifactorial. Some people will have been traumatized, so they disassociate.
Right.
Some people will have grown up in families where that just wasn't spoken about, it wasn't dealt with, they don't know how to deal with emotions. And other people will be a huge defense of, I don't want to be vulnerable, it's too threatening.
Yeah. So funny enough, I was talking to the driver on the way home yesterday morning when I finished my show, and he was a really nice guy, and we were just sort of chatting and everything, and he was talking about happiness, and I said that I think that happiness is overrated, and I'll tell you why. Because I've always seen as happiness as something that is given to me externally. I much prefer to be content, because contentment is something that is in me. That's me. I love contentment because I'm in control of it. Happiness, it almost feels like that can be taken away from me by somebody else, like a relationship ending or something bad happening external to me. Is that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you in that. And happiness is transitory. It's like a moment in time, whereas contentment, it's foundational.
Yeah.
It's something that is grounding, that is with you. Whereas, like, you know, I don't know, you're happy you got a promotion, but that passes.
But it almost feels like it is, happiness is gifted to me, whereas contentment is mine.
Yeah.
And all mine.
It's something, it's something that nobody can take away from you, because you control your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. So,
do you think that people chase happiness in the right way? That there's always the new car that's going to make me happy. Oh, it didn't. You know, then there's a new job. That's what's going to make me happy. Oh, I feel the same. Is there that going on as well in society at the moment?
I think there is a lot of it. I think it's about trying to fill a psychological hole, really. So, you know, you get the filler of the car, or the diamond ring, or the promotion, or, you know, the salary increase. But it's transitory, because if you don't have that foundation, what you were talking about about that feeling of contentment, you know, within you, that goes, and you need to keep filling.
Yeah. It's really fascinating to me. Would you mind staying on for another 10 minutes if we just take a quick break? That would be great. So with me is Desirée Silverstone, and we'll come back in just a moment. Hello, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you until 4 o'clock, and I have Desirée Silverstone, a psychotherapist and executive coach at Head Honchos, with me. And Desirée, we were just talking there about, just in the break there, about the work that you do now, and you were explaining to me that you work with executives to bring out more of that emotional intelligence in them. Why are they seeking that in the first place?
Well, I think, you know, people want to be better leaders. The world is changing. It's no longer, you know, hierarchical in terms of this is the boss, especially with the millennials and the Z generation. They're wanting, you know, much more equality, a much sort of flatter way of leadership versus I am the boss. And there is a huge shortage of people, many more jobs than there are people.
Yeah.
And if you want people, you have to be good at relationships. People are looking for, the younger generation, they're looking for psychological safety. They're looking for people who are transparent. The minute that somebody like an executive walks in, your boss walks in and isn't transparent, and he's hiding behind like the mask. One of the questions that I ask when I'm coaching people is, if you had to take away the mask, what would be underneath? And people pick up on it, because we've got spindle neurons, we've got mirror neurons, and they pick up on energy. So although the person may not overtly be doing something, it's the micro expressions, it's the energy that they're giving off, and then people feel threatened. So it's very important for leaders to be emotionally intelligent and to be able to relate to people.
Isn't it also important for those young people to be more emotionally robust? We can't pander, particularly in the workplace, to somebody who might get a little bit upset if the boss walked in and went, you haven't done your job.
Well, equally, you know, executive coaching shouldn't only be for the executives. It should be for everybody, for them to also, for other people to become more resilient. Because ultimately they want to be the leaders of the future. They also have to learn to be resilient, and they also have to learn different coping skills.
Yeah.
So it's about people learning, but different things on different levels.
But is it difficult, though, at the moment with learning a different way of management? Because the old way, the top-down management, there was much more distance between lower ranks and higher ranks, you know, so they're going for a more linear style of management. But that puts you closer to people. That makes your relationship potentially more intimate. I don't mean that in a sexual way, but it certainly makes it more intimate if you're sat next to the boss and he's not in his own office and he's sat next to you and you can have a chat with him over coffee. then you break down boundaries, and then you get people saying, well, my boss that took me out for a drink and he touched me on the leg. You know, surely that brings in a whole different raft of issues and problems.
I think that you can still be professional and friendly, but have boundaries. I mean, you don't need to come into work and, you know, hang out, you know, that you had a fight with your partner. You can still, you know, be professional but friendly and warm. And, it, you know, I mean, that's inappropriate behaviour in terms of what you're talking about. But when there's sort of more mutuality but respect with it,
but your boundaries are bound to come down, though, aren't they? If your boss is sat at the next desk with you, because there is chatter, there is banter, and there should be at work. That's what that builds those collegiate relationships. So your boss might hear about your bust up with your boyfriend or whatever, and ask you about it, and then the person might go, "Well, it's nothing to do with you. It's not." Do you know what I mean? I just think, does it not create issues of that it's safer to have those boundaries of top-down management?
Well, I think that leaders are being encouraged to actually, you know, have the ability to talk about, well, you know, I'm getting divorced, or, you know, there's domestic violence, and it's not necessarily for them to deal with it. They're not there to be a therapist, but companies are now having to put in, you know, and care about mental health and mental and wellness. Yeah. In the workplace, and offer services like employment assistance programs or coaches or referral systems to help them. So it's not about the boss actually saying, okay, well, you know, let's sit down and you know, talk about whatever it is that's bothering you. It's about, I'm really sorry, what support do you need? Can we offer you something? Because nobody's expecting them to be therapists or coaches.
But again, going back to the generations that are coming through, are we not just pandering to them, pampering them? You know, work is work. Work is meant to be somewhere you go that you don't always love. Sorry to break that to you, but it's not always somewhere you love. And you go there because you get paid to do a job, and then you go home. And now it seems that jobs and workplaces have got to, you know, offer you a recreational room, therapist, perhaps a bit of massage at the weekend. I mean, it just seems like, you know, what happened to work being work?
So I'm smiling, Petrie, because, you know, I'm going to challenge you over here and say, because you said to me earlier, well, you know, when I grew up, we didn't talk about things. We just had to get on with it. And that is mirrored in an old work style of come to work. We don't care that you hate your job. Just get on with it. And that's changing.
Yeah, that creates something. That create you know, when I first started in journalism, I was the only female in the newsroom. I had to be ballsy. Right, I had to. It wasn't the most fun environment I'd ever been in because I was treated very differently, but that creates a strength. That gives you an impetus to push through. Whereas if I'd been, you know, sat down and had somebody plait my hair and give me a massage and say, there, don't worry, I'm not sure I would have ended up going on and being a war correspondent.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but I think that doesn't really happen in, you know, often. It's not like a regular thing that happens. People go into the workplace. They are generally, you know, professional. And
they go to earn money. They go to work. They don't go to get therapy.
No, they're not. But it's kind of, okay, I'm working with somebody at the moment who is a really high flyer.
Right.
She's just started in massive international company, and her son was diagnosed with autism, which, you know, for her it means, you know, different school and all kinds of things, because he's just had this diagnosis, and there's a lot that she's got to put together and sort of organize. Her husband is also a very high flyer, so she needs support for a period of time. I need to, you know, have more flexible time to do whatever I need to do. But that doesn't mean to say that that's a forever. It's a period of, and the company saying, all right, you know, we'll be compassionate. We understand what's going on. You know, take off extra time to organise whatever you need to. They're being supportive, but it's not that this is going to be a forever thing.
Right.
Whereas before, it probably would have been, well, you know, that's your problem. Just get on with it.
Yeah. But there will be companies that still say that's your problem, just get on with it. Or do you think that they are a dying breed now?
I think they're a dying breed. I don't, it's, yes, of course, it's still carrying on.
I suppose the bigger companies are learning quicker.
Yeah. It's evolving. Like, the world doesn't stand still. We don't have kids, going up chimneys and working 7 days a week, in factories where they're getting injured by machines. That evolved. We've got health and safety now. And, the workplace is evolving.
And do you find that managers overall are open to this, or are they annoyed by it? Do they think, look, I just want my staff to get on and do their job, and I really don't need this?
I think I work with, quite big companies, and I think that the culture is now that this is what we do, and they're trying to get into it. But people have different constructs about how they see diversity and inclusion. There's unconscious bias. These are all things that people are having to work at in the workplace to actually sort of evolve where the workplace is going. So people are trying very hard to gain more emotional intelligence, to deal with unconscious bias, to deal with diversity and inclusion.
And what about the workplace in itself is changing, isn't it? That's becoming more fluid. The workplace can almost be anywhere now. Do you see that continuing on into the future? Do you see that as the next step, really?
I think hybrid working is here to stay. Yeah, absolutely.
And what about for people like Elon Musk, who totally disagrees with you?
Well, everybody's...
Maybe he needs some coaching.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and he's welcome, and I'm happy to coach him.
Yeah, but the thing is that he owns the business. He knows what his business needs, and he's just said, I'm not happy with this. I don't think you're going to be working just as hard at home. In fact, he said, go and pretend to work somewhere else. And he said, if you don't turn up to the office, and the office is what I say it is, because I pay your wages, then I'll assume you've resigned.
Well, then I suppose you've got to ask his workers how happy they are. They're working under, a thing under an umbrella of fear because we want to work for Elon Musk. It looks good on our CV, but actually we come away with great stress levels because we're constantly threatened because we may lose our job. And actually, when you get stressed, the real estate in terms of your decision making is just this little bit of your prefrontal cortex, and the more stressed you get, the more it kind of cuts off. So you don't have your whole brain available for creative thinking and getting buy-in and be motivated because you're absolutely petrified that, you're going to get the boot.
Yeah.
I don't think he probably, are people happy there? I don't know. I don't know what the research is.
So I suppose a lot of people just, if it's Elon Musk on the, you're going to be a success at least.
Yeah.
And Elon has always led by example as well. He works on the factory floor. He makes sure that he slept on the factory floor when there's been a deadline. So I guess that is that's always what I've wanted, is a boss that's led by example.
Well, it can lead by example, but when seems like he's being quite sort of dictatorial in the way that he leads, which doesn't generally make for a good leader when you're dictatorial.
He who pays the piper.
But he does pay the piper. And people want his logo and his stamp on their CV.
Exactly, they do. Exactly that. And they will put up with quite a lot, I would have thought.
Are they happy? I don't know. I would guess, if you had to ask me personally, probably not. If you're dealing with somebody who, is that autocratic.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the future for, we said that hybrid working is the future. What's the future for staffing? Is that going to get even more sort of chilled? Is work going to become...
Yep. I think that, it's no longer going to be the motto of, people we care for people. If they're going to, you can't just pay lip service anymore. People are wanting to see it in action. They're wanting to know what that means. They want companies that are ethical, that are contributing to the wider world and society. There's sort of the younger generation want more meaning in terms of the places that they're going into. They care what the company stands for. So it can't just be, this is our mission statement and we don't really do anything about it. So, yep, you're going to have to walk the walk.
Blimey.
Talk the talk.
Thank goodness I don't run a business. I'd be shockingly bad at it. Desirée, it's been lovely to meet you. Thank you so much. Really interesting stuff. Desirée Silverstone there, psychotherapist and executive coach at Head Honchos. So, yeah, brilliant stuff. What do you think? Do you think that we pamper young people? Do we give them far too much in terms of when it was like when you started work? Yeah, I suppose that won't wash anymore, will it? So we're going to be continuing with some phone calls now, and let's